Welcome everyone. Today's topic is rental market demands and profitable updates. Okay, so let's start talking about what is it that you need to know when you're thinking about investing in real estate, particularly in rentals. Okay, so let's talk about rentals market. What is it that you need to understand? The first thing, and this is one of the most common mistakes, is that people do not understand the market they need to invest. So what is it that you need to pay attention to? Number one, when you're going to invest in rentals, you need to pick an area that supports rentals. So what does that mean? All you need to understand is the difference between price versus rents. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that you need to be able to find the best markets where the prices are very affordable for a single family home, but yet the rents are very high. That makes it a top rental market. Phil, can you please send me the link to the top rental market? So I'm going to show you what you need to pay attention to. And so this is number one, okay? Number two factor that you need to consider is every market, it's ranked by a category. So we have A being the best, D being the most challenging. So what market makes it the best for rentals? So A minus, B, and C, okay? Those are the best rental markets. I know it's like a very wide range. We typically, right, like to, particularly today with the pandemic, stay away from very distressed neighborhoods, okay? Because you're not going to get collectible tenants. That's one of the biggest problems. You want to have a great pool of tenants, okay, that are collectible, meaning that they're going to be able to pay rent. So right now with the pandemic, guess what markets have been affected the most? Meaning where there's been so many layoffs. D and C, okay? So ideally, you focus on B markets and A minus, okay? Now, what do I say A minus? A plus, those are too expensive and the numbers are not gonna work, okay? So again, focus on markets that are in the B category and C. So I'm gonna show you what those look like. The third thing that you need to pay attention to is make sure that you have enough cash flow and equity, okay? So cash flow, we're talking about more than $250 per month per door, and equity, you need at least 25%. So we're gonna talk about that in just a second. So what it means is that when you buy a property, you need to make sure that after you pay all the operating expenses and the debt service, you still have about $250 per month positive cash flow, and that you have enough equity, at least 25%, so that you're able to refinance the property, and especially if you used a hard money lender, private money lender to buy the property and rehab it, you're gonna need to have on the back end 25% equity. So what it means is that you bought it for 100, you put in 50 for rehab, okay, all in 150,000, but it will appraise for 200,000, okay? Therefore, you have 50,000 in equity or 25%. That's the minimum requirement that banks are gonna be looking for. When you have 25% equity, it will automatically meet the lender's debt coverage ratio. So lenders are looking for a debt coverage ratio of at least 2.25 or higher, okay? You're gonna be able to meet that ratio when you have at least 25% equity. Now, what's the debt coverage ratio? What it means is that the bank wants to make sure that you're able to pay all your operating expenses, okay? I mean, anything that it takes to run the property and still be able to pay the debt service, meaning the principal and interest, and surplus at least 20%, 25% of it. So let me give an example. The formula for the debt coverage ratio is the net operating income, okay? Net operating income is going to be your rents minus your operating expenses. What are your operating expenses? You're gonna have tax, insurance, utilities such as water, gas, electric, okay? When you rent single family homes, you may not pay any of the utilities, okay? So most of the times, those are paid by the tenants, but at least you're gonna be responsible for taxes, insurance, maintenance, and perhaps some utilities. Those are gonna be your operating expenses. So you're gonna take your rent, let's assume the rent is $2,000. All your operating expenses are $500. So now your net operating income is $1,500, okay? And now you're gonna divide that by your debt service, which is the mortgage, principal and interest. So if you bought a property for $150, that includes the rehab, your mortgage is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of $1,100, okay? So if we divide 1,500 by 1,100, that's gonna give us, let me pull that up. So 1,500 divided by 1,100 is equivalent to 1.36, 1.36. So the debt coverage ratio of 1.36, it's awesome. So what does this tell to the lender? It tells the lender that not only are you gonna be able to cover all your operating expenses, but you will also be able to pay the mortgage. And on top of that, you're gonna be able to have a surplus of at least 36%, okay? So that you are bringing into your pocket. So the minimum requirement is that you bring at least a 25% surplus cash after you paid all the operating expenses and the debt service, meaning the mortgage. So that's just a little bit of math, but let me tell you, once you have these formulas and the numbers working for you, guess what? You're gonna be able to build a rental empire. Now, to simplify all of these, right? Because it's a little bit complicated. How do you simplify that, okay? To simplify and be able to meet all these bank's criteria, all you need to do is find a property that you have a spread of 80 to 100,000 from the purchase price to the ARV, and the rehab is less than 50,000. When you meet that criteria, guess what? You're gonna have cash flow, you're gonna meet the debt coverage ratio. Let me give you an example. So all of this is summarized by, let's assume you buy a property for 100, you rehab it for 40, so all in is 140, okay? And the property appraises for, I said, $80,000 to $100,000 on top of the purchase price, okay? So what does that mean? When you look at a property and they say, well, you can buy it for 100,000, your next thought should be, this property better appraised for 180 to 200,000, and the rehab should be less than 50,000. If that's the case, you got a home run deal that is gonna meet the bank's criteria, okay, when it comes to equity and cash flow. So in this particular example, if you bought it for 100, you put in 40, all in is 140. If the property appraises for 200, guess what? You've met that criteria, and that's a great cash flowing property. So you see these, you have a spread of 100,000. It could appraise to even 180, okay? And the rehab being 40,000, then you got a home run deal that is gonna meet the debt coverage ratio that the bank requires, plus the byproduct is gonna be that you cash flow, okay? So these are the main factors that you need to think about when you are invested in rentals. So the first question is, does the market support rentals? Because there are markets that only support flips, and vice versa. And obviously, one of the things that it's a given, location, 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 right? On any market, any strategy that you take on, you always have to make sure that properties are in a quiet street, away from cemeteries, train tracks, airports, floodplains. Otherwise, that's going to drastically impact your ARV. So location is very critical within the right market. And in fact, that was one of our first mistakes, that we invested in a rental in the wrong market. So obviously, it didn't cash flow. We didn't get collectible tenants. Contractors didn't want to go there. So it was just a nightmare. So make sure that when you're thinking about rentals, you're going to invest in the top rental markets, okay? Again, the top rental markets are going to be driven by this relationship, price versus rents. You want a property that is affordable, but yet the rents are very high. So I'm gonna show you what the top rental markets are. So I'm gonna pull them up on the screen so that you get an idea where you need to be, what numbers you need to look at. So let me share my screen with all of you. And pull up the, okay, so it's coming up on the screen. Okay, so right here, and we're gonna make this available to all of you, okay? This spreadsheet, because you don't need to think, create, work. We're gonna give it to you. So in this spreadsheet, what we're doing is we're filtering by top rental markets in BC neighborhoods, okay? But again, you can do it through ChicagoDealVault on any category of market, A or B or C or a combination of them. We just put it all together so you can see what we're looking at. So let me give an example. Let's take a look at the first market, that is Berkeley, okay? Area type, it's a B, so that makes it a bread and butter market, likely affected by the pandemic. Why? Because you're gonna have mostly white collar people living there, which means that they get to work from home remotely, versus C minus D markets, they don't get to work from home remotely. They have to physically go to work, okay? And some of them, unfortunately, have lost their jobs. Okay, so that is why make sure that you focus on B plus, A minus markets. That would be the best strategy if you're thinking about buying rentals. Right here, we give you the livability score. Anything over 70%, it's great. What does this mean? This is a summary of economic status of the neighborhood, schools, crime, amenities, cost of living. That's just in a bundle, a summary. So anything over 70, it's a great market, okay? So a B market is 70 and above. A C market is from between 60 and 70. That's a C market. A D market is anything below in the 50s, okay? That's like a war zone, okay? That your safety might be at risk, okay? So the next thing is we summarize right here the factors for these neighborhoods, such as cost of living. When you see a D for the cost of living, that means that it's not as affordable as other neighborhoods. Then crime, that means B, it's low crime. Employment, okay? Employment means when it has a D, that means that there are not too many sources of employment in this particular market. Housing, this refers to the housing supply. It's got a C. That means that the supply for properties in this market is not the best. But that's what makes this an attractive market, right? Supply and demand. So the supply is low, yet the demand is high. Why? Because property prices are still very affordable. So let me show you. Let's get to that in just a second. I want to make sure that you understand everything. Education, this refers to the school system. B means that schools are very good, okay? 8, 9, and 10, even 7, 8, 9 out of 10. So you have really good schools, and that's an indicator that makes the population growth go through the roof. When you find a market with good schools, that's what families are looking for, right? For their children. So the bread and butter neighborhoods, meaning that the medium household income can afford, they have families, they're going to be looking for good schools, okay? So when you have good schools in a market, guess what? Population growth is going to go up, therefore the demand goes up and the rents will be high, okay? Population growth in this particular market, Berkeley, is stable. It's almost 0%. Median income, this is the median household income, okay? It's 64,000. In Illinois, it's about 70,000, 75,000. So it's a little bit less than the median. Now let's go to the sweet spot to buy a detached, a single family home. It's highlighted in orange. In Berkeley, you can buy a 2-3 bedroom home for less than 175,000, okay? And yet, let me scroll to the right, okay? This column that is highlighted in red, the rents are through the roof. Over $2,000 median rental price for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So the rents are extremely high. That makes Berkeley the top rental market in the Chicagoland area. Okay, let me just quickly show you Hillside. Hillside makes it the top second rental market. Okay, so what we like to look at are the two columns that I highlighted. I want to know affordability, right? Can I buy a property for less than 200,000, but yet I need to collect more than 1,500. So Hillside, for a 3-bedroom, the rent is $1,950, and yet the purchase price could be less than $160,000. Okay, so the relationship between rent and price is huge. That makes a market a top rental. Okay, when you have that balance where when it's affordable, but yet the rents are super high. So let me tell you, let's put it on the board. The price should be less than 200,000. It should be more than 1,500. Okay. So now let me give you a rule of thumb. So I call these the 1% rule of thumb. When you buy the property for 140,000, all in is 140. Guess what? You better collect 1% of the 140. So 1% of 140,000 is 1,400 per month. So you better collect 1,400 per month. So in the market that I was showing you, like Berkeley, imagine all in you could be at 170,000 purchase plus rehab, just an assumption, 170,000. But if you're collecting over 2,000 in rent, you're gonna be cash flowing at least 200-300 positive cash flow. Okay, why? Because the rents are so high. One factor that you need to consider that could be a deal breaker for a rental market, guess what that is? Does anybody have an idea what that is? I haven't brought that up. I'm leaving that as a quiz question. Does anybody know what could break the cash flow on a market? Absolutely, Brian, you nailed it. Taxes. Okay, taxes, absolutely. So there are going to be some markets that, guess what? Property prices are affordable, meaning less than 200,000. The cash flow is good. I mean, the rents are high, but guess what? Property taxes are super high. So there are some areas where the taxes, this is the deal breaker for rentals, is over 10,000. Okay, you have to be super careful. If the taxes are over 10,000, typically over 8,000, 8, 9 and up, it's high. So that's just going to break your cash flow. So even though you meet all these requirements, taxes could be a deal breaker. So that's something that you cannot ignore, taxes, okay? Obviously, the first thing that you need to do when you buy a rental, you need to appeal the taxes, okay? So you hire an attorney firm that all they do is tax appeals. And we're going to share that information with you. We have those in ChicagoDealVault so that they can minimize your yearly tax bill. Okay, it's super important. It's a must. Property taxes. So you guys are rocking. So let me continue to show you the following markets, because these are the suburbs, right? So let me just show you the top rental markets. Berkeley, Hillside, Bridgeview, Allsip. In fact, we just made an offer in Allsip for a property that was listed for $100,000, and this is an MLS property. Okay, $100,000. That property could appraise for a little bit over $200,000. So there's a spread of $100,000. Well, guess what? The rehab was not going to be $50,000. The rehab was going to be at least $75,000. So we made an offer for $75,000. So we're still working with the agent. They're getting multiple offers. As you can imagine, there's a shortage of inventory, but this is like blackjack, okay? You cannot overpay for a property, okay? Super important, because then you can lose your shirt, okay? So we know the rehab is going to be over $50,000, so we need to take that into account in our offer. So we could not afford to pay asking price $100,000, because otherwise the numbers wouldn't work for a cash flowing property or for a flip when the rehab is so extensive. And in fact, I'm glad that I'm bringing this up because guess what? The business and the money is not in the rehab, okay? The bigger the rehab, the higher the risk. You should focus instead on finding better quality properties. What does that mean? That the rehab is light to medium, meaning less than 50,000. Because big projects are going to take you longer, the risk is going to be higher, and the opportunity cost of doing more than one deal is given up, right? When you take on a project that is going to take you 8 to 9 months, you're pretty much stuck. You cannot grow, right? Unless you do multiple deals. But to begin with, you need to keep it simple, right? Now, what I mean by simple, I'm talking about 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Ideally, no basement, ranch homes, no basements, because basements can cost you a lot of money, okay? If they flood, it's just a big problem, right? If they have foundation issues, it's best to buy properties with crawl space on a slab. It's just a lot easier. It's cheaper to rehab, and it's not gonna make a big difference when it comes to the rental market, okay? It does make a difference when a property has a basement when you're flipping the property, but when you're renting, it's not a big deal, okay? What do you have in the basement? Mostly storage and laundry, right? So you can do laundry on the first floor. So it's not a big deal not to have a basement, okay? That's what I mean. You need to keep it simple, 2-bedroom. In fact, right now we're rehabbing a property in Burbank. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Very small property, so the rehab is going to take 2.5 weeks. We're almost done. We're just waiting for the inspection, the rough inspection, which actually we passed today. So we're going to just cover the walls and finish that by next week. So the total rehab time was about 3 weeks. So that's what I mean by a simple in and out property. You have to spend the time on finding better quality properties on the top rental markets if you're gonna stick to rentals. So again, I wanna give you my $1 million secrets when analyzing rental properties. Number one, find the $80,000 to $100,000 spread, okay? Number two, make sure that the rehab is less than 50,000, okay? Now, how can you know how much the rehab is going to be? Very simple. The first thing that you need to look at a property is, do I need to do the kitchen and the bathroom? If that's the case, then it's a medium rehab. Light rehab means that you only need to paint the kitchen cabinets and you need to maybe add the vanity. So you don't need to update the kitchen or the bathroom. That's a light rehab. That's if you get super lucky on an off-market property. But over 90% of the times, you're going to need to update the kitchen and the bathroom. That makes it a medium rehab. So for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you're going to be hitting at least $35,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. $35,000 in rehab. How do I come up with this number? Two ways. Okay, take the square footage. Most 3-bedroom, 2-baths are less than 1,700 square feet. So we typically multiply that by 2. So 70 times 2, 1,700 square feet times 2, it's 34. So 34,000. That's the rule of thumb. So you're going to take the square footage times $20. That's what it means. So 1,700 square feet home, the rehab is going to be 34,000 plus. You always have unexpected items on every single rehab. I mean, no questions. Okay. Therefore, you need to add a cushion for at least 10,000. So you should estimate a rehab to be at least 45,000. In this case, 44,000, because you're going to have light electric, light plumbing. You're going to need to perhaps fix some windows, roof repairs. You're going to perhaps need to make some repairs on the wall, insulation. You will always have to, as I said, update the kitchen, the bathroom, refinish the flooring, maybe put new flooring, paint, light fixtures. That makes it a combined total cost of no less than $35,000. Even when you do a light rehab, guess what? The minute you open up a property, you're going to spend no less than $15,000, even if it's a light rehab. Light rehab means that you do painting, light fixtures, and cosmetic repairs. It's going to be no less than $15,000. Okay, you get lucky if you spend $10,000, but that's never been the case for us, and we've had very light rehabs. So average, your rehab is going to be about $35,000 to $45,000 on a medium rehab. We stay away from gut rehabs. Gut rehabs is where you need to touch or redo new systems, like you need to do brand new HVAC. So the furnace, the water heater, the condenser, you may need to upgrade the service panel. You may need to change the conduit. You may need to update the rough plumbing. You may need to put new windows. You may need to do a new roof. You may need to touch the foundation. So those type of rehabs are too risky, especially now with the pandemic. And in 2021, towards the fall, property prices are going to adjust. Why? Because there's going to be a huge wave of the backed up pre-foreclosures coming into the market. So that increase in supply will cause a decrease in property prices. It's not going to be huge, but we're going to have declining property values in the next 7 to 9 months. So just be aware that doing big rehabs doesn't mean more money. In fact, it means more risk and perhaps less money because of the opportunity cost. The money is not in the rehab. The money is finding great, awesome deals, okay? That's when you make money. When you get a great deal on the contract, that's when you start making money. Not when you rehab the property, not when you rent it, not when you flip it. When you find a great deal with a great profit spread, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to hit that $80,000 to $100,000 spread, okay? And then you need to do the rule of thumb, right? Less than 200,000, and the rents need to be over 1,500. That's the key. And use the 1% rule of thumb, which gives you what you need to rent the property for based on your all-in expense to buy and rehab. So if you bought it for 100, put in 50,000, all-in is 150. You need to collect at least 1,500, okay, to be able to cash flow. If you're not able to do that, you're not going to cash flow. Therefore, it's a must that you focus on the top rental markets. That's it. So let me continue to show you some of the top rental markets in the city, right? Because we have them in the suburbs and also in the city. For those of you who are interested in the city, so again, Berkeley, Hillside, Bridgeview, Allsip, Chicago Ridge, Worth. Let me scroll down the list, and right here, Worth. And then let me click on the Chicago, so that for those of you who are interested in the Chicago line, it's right here. Osborne, West, West, it should be else. There's a typo there. I think West We need to fix this. Phil, can you make a note? Hedgewich, Orchard Heights, Pullman. So as you see, we were able to pull the C markets, but I'm going to show you in ChicagoDealVault how you can pull them very quickly, okay? So in 10 seconds, you have them at your fingertips. So click on area reports and then pick the area type, A, B, C. Remember, we're going to need to focus on B, C plus, and A minus. So for sakes, I'm going to click on B market, and then I'm going to pick cash flow, okay? And then search. This is going to give you the same markets that I showed you in the spreadsheet are right here. So what I like to do is I like to click on the column that says median rental income for a 3-bedroom. So I want to know the ones that rent for the highest dollar amount, okay? And obviously I like to look at the purchase price, that it has to be less than 200,000. So Evanston, I'm going to eliminate Evanston because Evanston, as you can see right here, the sweet spot to buy a single family home is over $500,000, okay? Evanston has pockets, so Evanston has very high rents, but also you have pockets. Every neighborhood has pockets, and property prices are very, very expensive, so the numbers are not going to work. So again, the property has to be less than 200,000, and the rent has to be over 1,500. You know what? Now that I mentioned pockets, I'm going to show you something really, really cool that you need to be aware of. So let's find an off-market property in Berkeley, okay? Because Berkeley, it's a top rental market. So I'm going to go into pre-foreclosures, and I'm going to look for Berkeley, because I'm going to show you the process that you need to follow when it comes to finding deals, analyzing them, and then making offers. So again, number one, I know Berkeley is a top rental market. So the next step is to find a great deal. So we found 52 properties. What I'm going to do is I'm going to further filter that by high equity. We only found 3 properties, okay, that have a lot of equity in Berkeley. I'm going to randomly click on one of them. So why is this a great deal? This is a great deal because the owner owes about $80,000 for the property, but yet this property could appraise for up to 230, 240. Okay, so he's got a lot of equity. Okay, now this is what I was telling you. How much should you pay for this property? Okay, since this property can appraise for over 200,000, you need to have that $100,000 spread. Okay, and this is a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. That's the perfect small house that is very marketable. So you should favor 3-bedroom over 2-bedroom all day long, okay? Rents are gonna be way higher, and people just love the space of the extra bedroom. Whether they use it or not, 3-bedroom is just the way to go. So this is the ideal home, right? Now the question is, how much should you pay for the property? Okay, to get this property, I mean, you obviously have to pay the $80,000 outstanding balance plus late fees, penalties. That's going to come up to like close to 90,000. Obviously, the owner needs some money to be able to relocate. So right here in ChicagoDealVault, we tell you the most we should pay for this property. That is with the assumption that this property that has 1,200 square feet, the rehab is going to be somewhere in the 20 to 30,000. But we're going to be more conservative, and let's assume the rehab is going to be 50,000. Okay, therefore, to this max allowed offer, meaning the most you should pay for the property, I'm going to knock off 20,000 on top of it. Why? Because the rehab might be up to 50,000. It might not be 30,000. For these formulas, for these numbers that we give you, we're taking into account that the rehab may be no more than 30,000. Let's take it worst case scenario. The rehab is going to be 50,000. Therefore, now I need to decrease my max offer by 20,000, right? So instead of paying for a flip exit strategy 143, I'm going to pay 123. For a rental, which is the most forgiving offer that you can make, 167 minus 20,000, 147, so 150. So think about this. Even if you're gonna do a rental, this is $1 million advice, okay? Even if you're gonna buy it for a rental, make sure that you pay the flip price, okay? Think like you're gonna flip the property. You need to pay less for the money, okay? Less for the property. Because guess what? If you later change your mind and you decide to sell the property, you've got to be able to do that and make a profit, at least 20% return on it. Therefore, you always need to aim to pay the flip price, even though it's for a rental. So in this case, 143 minus 20, so the most I should pay for this property should be 125. So think about this. The owner is in the hole for 80,000. Let's assume after fees and penalties, we're gonna end up paying 90,000. But if you can give the owner 35,000 on top of it, wouldn't you think the owner is gonna sell it to you? Of course, right? Because otherwise, if the owner doesn't do anything, they're gonna lose the property to the foreclosure process, ruin their credit. The bank is gonna end up with the property, or perhaps at the judicial auction, an investor buys the property. Okay, but they're not gonna buy it for 90,000. It's gonna be for a lot more because by then the bank has incurred more carrying expenses and court fees. So the starting bid is gonna be over 80,000. Okay, so at this point, if you were to reach out to the owner by clicking on the name of the owner, we're gonna give you their contact information right here, their cell phone number, everything, right? So you can reach out to the owner and understand what they want, how motivated they are, build rapport, right? Because if this is a property that they can no longer afford, then you can help them. And in the process, you can end up paying 50, 60 cents on the dollar for an incredible property in an amazing rental market. Okay, so the most we should pay for this property should be 125,000. Okay, that's with the assumption the rehab is going to be 50,000. That means we're going to need to do the kitchen, the bathroom, the flooring. We're going to have HVAC, electric, plumbing work to do. Nothing major, okay? We're going to maybe perhaps roof repairs, windows, landscaping, exterior work, but it's not going to be nothing major, right? So the most you should pay, it should be somewhere in the 125, but always you need to look at the property from the inside to make sure that what you're getting into rehab-wise, okay? So this is an example of a great property. Now, we went into the number crunching analysis, right? But again, what is something that can affect your property value when looking at a property? Location, 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 right? So as I said earlier, you want to make sure that you are nowhere near busy streets, cemeteries, airports, train tracks, floodplains. And also, you need to be aware of pockets. Remember that I mentioned that? Pockets. Every neighborhood, especially in the city of Chicago, from block to block, property prices could drop 50% or they could increase by 50%. In the suburbs, guess what? You also have pockets. They're not as drastic as in the city, but you do have. So I'm going to show you here in ChicagoDealVault, you can identify pockets. So in this case, the first thing that you want to do is location, right? So I'm going to zoom in. One of the problems that I see location-wise in this property is that this is very, very close to 290, okay? So as you can see on the map, this property, unless you have soundproof windows, you're gonna be able to hear the traffic from 290. I mean, you're like a house away from 290. So that will for sure affect the property value on this house. When it comes to appraisal value, being very close to highways, it's a big deal, right? So this can knock off at least 15, 20,000 when it comes to the appraisal value. Okay, why? Because it's not so desirable, right? People don't want to be looking at the highway from their bedroom window, right? Plus the noise. The noise is the biggest factor. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is pockets, right? You want to make sure that you're not in a bad pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down, and there's a tab right here that says Market Overview. okay? In this market overview, we integrate with Trulia, okay? So Trulia has a heat map for pockets. It's super cool, okay? So you see Trulia says that this property may be worth 230,000, okay? So let me just quickly look at the neighborhood. I mean, Berkeley it's super nice, right? So look at these. It's a beautiful, quiet street, but as you can see, look, that's 290, like a block away, less than a house away. So this truck passing by, that's 290. So it's gonna be pretty loud, okay, the minute you go out the house. But let me tell you, when you click on the crime tab right here, this is going to tell you if the property is in a pocket, like in a high crime pocket. In this case, it's marked by light blue means it's okay, darker blue it's not good. So in this case, it's good, right? Berkeley, it's a great market. So as you can see, as I zoom in, you know, there's nothing wrong in this neighborhood, except, you know, the location, the proximity to 290. That's the only factor that it's not the best on this deal, okay? So let me give you an example. While I'm here in the system, so if I put in the rehab being 50,000, right? 50,000, 1, 2, 3, it will automatically adjust my purchase price, my max allowed offer. I told you the most we should offer is about 125. The system came up with 117,000, so it's in the ballpark. But you have to be aware now because of the location. I wouldn't want to offer 117,000. I would want to offer somewhere in the ballpark of 100,000, just because of the location. Location is a big deal. But if it's a rental, it's not such a big deal, right? If it was a flip, this could be a deal breaker. I mean, this could increase your market time by 2-3 months, okay? Because people don't want to live next to 290, right? So for a flip, this is a deal breaker for a flip. But for a rental, it's not as a big deal. So in this particular case, I would want to make sure that we have really good windows, okay, to prevent the sound from coming in. So that's just an example of the process that you need to think about when analyzing a property, okay? Location, number one, making sure that it's in a market that supports high rents, but yet affordability is there. Next, you need to understand the numbers. The big profit spread that you need is 80 to 100,000 between the purchase price and the ARV. But again, you don't need to think, work, create, nothing. We're going to give you all the numbers. We're going to give you the data, the top markets, everything, right? Through ChicagoDealVault. But again, I want to make sure that you understand how to quickly analyze deals. And please never forget to check the pockets, right? Because I've seen properties, especially in Chicago, that they look amazing number-wise. When I click on the pockets, oh my goodness, it's like in a very high crime block. So you've got to stay away from that because you're going to have issues like with getting good tenants. So now we're going to share the top markets. Also, Phil, can you please send me the one-page rehab estimator? I'm going to share that with the team as well, because I just gave you the shortcuts to be able to estimate the rehab on a property, right? It's based on the square footage, making sure that it's in a BC market. If it's in an A market, that formula won't work, because A market, it's a very nice neighborhood, like let's say Wilmette, Northbrook, Glenview. So you cannot multiply the square footage times $20. You're going to multiply the square footage times 35 at least, because the expectation of the rehab for a very nice neighborhood is going to be way higher. Does that make sense? So this formula is going to work for the bread and butter markets. C, B, A minus is going to be really, really easy. So now what I want to share with you is, once you buy the property, it's time to do the rehab, right? So I want to show you this rehab estimator because guess what? When you are going to fund the property, you're going to need to provide scope of work, okay? Because guess what? Either an hard money lender or a private money lender is going to give you 100% of the rehab, but you have to provide, especially for hard money lenders, institutional money, you have to provide a scope of work, okay? What you're gonna do, how much you're gonna spend, it's just a requirement for them to have a really good idea as to what the numbers are going to be when it comes to rehab and obviously refinancing, making sure that you have enough equity, okay? So we'll share that with you in just a second. Are there any questions on the line that I can help you answer? Okay, so, okay, there's a question. How are you handling COVID properties? How will you know if there was owned by COVID person? Oh, okay. So there is no way for you to know that. And in fact, let me tell you, that's something that does not affect the property value. Okay, it's not a material defect that will affect property value. Okay, so for instance, let me give you an example. If the owner had HIV, okay, by law, they're not required to disclose that information. Or even if a property, they call this stigmatized. If the property is stigmatized, so what does that mean? That somebody died in the property. That's what it means. Either through suicide or whatever the case may be, the property is stigmatized. They're not by law required to disclose that information. But that's a fact that's not going to affect the property value because it's not a material defect in the property. So by law, that is something that doesn't need to be disclosed. Okay, so yeah, COVID it does not even come to the picture when it comes to the property. Okay, because COVID is just a virus transmitted between people, so it does not affect the premises of the property. Okay, so nothing to worry about that. Another question is, so when the property is bought at a lower price and after rehab ARV is higher, how would that affect the property tax? Okay, so properties are assessed every 2 years. Okay, so when you buy a property, you fix it up and you put it on the market. They're going to be an assessment period every 2 years, but they're going to assess all the properties in the neighborhood. Okay, so they're not going to go to your property, do an appraisal, and say, oh, you did all of this work and now the property is worth a lot more. So they want to appraise that. However, when you do the rehab, you're going to need to pull permits, right? And some villages are going to require a scope of work. They may require an estimate from multiple contractors because guess what? Many villages, based on the scope of work, the money you spent on the property is how much they're going to charge you for the permit. And guess what? The building department or code enforcement department typically is not linked to the tax assessor. Okay, so that's based on my experience. So there's no way for them to know how much you've put into the property. But again, taxes are going up on a yearly basis, pretty much. You're paying taxes in arrears. So a good rule of thumb for you is to always contest taxes, okay? Appeal. You hire an appeal attorney or an appeal firm to do that for you, which, by the way, we have that in preferred partners. So we have tax appeal. So let me quickly show you where that is. You click on preferred partners right here. And then you find tax appeal. Let me scroll down. Tax appeal right here. So we use this company to help you reduce your taxes, okay? Another question is, how can we get access to the top rental markets? Oh, please send us an email. If you're a DealVault member, we're going to send you the spreadsheet, the one-page rehab estimator. We're also going to send you the top rental markets in the city and in the suburbs. Another question is, oh, Dr. Syed, how are you? In Section 8, a reliable source of collectible, is Section 8 a reliable source of collectible rental? Will that be a problem when when going to refinance to pay off the private money lender? Oh, Dr. Say, glad you joined. So Section 8, it's a very reliable source of income. In fact, it's one of my favorite ones. I'm going to tell you why. Because you have your rent secured, okay? Through Section 8. Not only that, but one of the things that I like is that they do yearly inspections and you have to address any issues they find. To me, I like it because that helps me keep up with the maintenance of the property. So I want to make sure that the tenant and the property, are in good standing. So I love collectible tenants. Section 8 is one of the best sources to accomplish that. Not only that, but in my experience, we have a couple of them. They're really great tenants. Okay, they take care of the property, and perhaps we've been lucky. I've heard experiences where, or other people's experiences where they have not been the best tenants. But let me tell you, they have to follow certain rules of conduct. Otherwise, they may lose their voucher, and that's a big deal. Okay, so, but I think it's one of the best sources. And be cautious because you cannot discriminate against Section 8 people, because guess what? It's a protected class and it's called source of income. So Section 8 is a source of income and it's a protected class. So you cannot discriminate against Section 8 perspectives. So if somebody calls you on your rental and they say, do you accept vouchers? You cannot say, no, I don't, because then you'll be discriminating against source of income. It's a protected class, okay? So be very, very cautious. The only drawback that you may have with Section 8 is that it's very hard to get rent increases. Okay, we typically like to increase the rent on a yearly basis. With Section 8, it's really hard to get increases. Okay, that's the only drawback. So once you rent at a certain price, you might be locked for a couple of years. But again, you don't get high turnover with Section 8 tenants. That's also a great positive thing with Section 8 tenants. So I'm glad that Dr. Said brought that up. Thank you, Dr. Said.
Thank you so much, Hugo.
Another question is, okay, so Phil, let's make sure that we make that spreadsheet available to them. And if you can please send instructions, Phil, on how people can get access to ChicagoDealVault in case they still don't have access. We're gonna give it to you for free for the next 30 days, unlimited training. So now, we have a couple of more minutes. I would like to cover, if you guys want, property management, because if we're talking about rentals, guess what? Once you rehab the property, you've got to rent it. So how do you do that, and how do you do it successfully? Do you want me to cover that in the next few minutes? I hear yeses. Okay, so let's just cover that very quickly. It is super, super critical that you thoroughly screen your tenants. The best resource to do that is to use, we use two websites. One is rentapplication.net. Phil, if you can please put it on the chat. So rentapplication.net is one great website that you have your tenants fill that out. You're going to get a background check. You're going to get criminal background check. You're going to get the FICO. You're going to get employment information. You're going to get eviction report. Okay, so you need to make sure that when it comes to rental, there's a rule of thumb, and I love this, and it's super, super simple. The rule of thumb is that the individual needs to make 40 times more the amount of the rent. So what does that mean? If you're renting the property for, let's say, $1,500, you need to make sure that their gross income is 40 times that amount. So 40 times 1,500 is $60,000. So they need to make $60,000 yearly gross income combined household to qualify. So this is my train of thought when I screen tenants. First of all, they cannot have an eviction record on file. If they have an eviction, they could have the best credit, the best income. It's a big no-no, okay? Evictions, especially right now, the moratorium for evictions has been pushed till February 6th, okay? It used to be until January 12th. Now it's been pushed until February 6th. And now Biden, that took office, he's thinking about pushing not only the moratorium on evictions, but also the moratorium on foreclosures until September, okay? Imagine, and this might take effect very soon, just FYI. You won't be able to evict anybody until September. You won't be able to foreclose on anybody until September, okay? That's being worked out as we speak, okay? Something to be aware of. So if there's an eviction record on their background check, it's a big no-no for us. The second thing that I look at is income. Do you have enough income that is 40 times the amount of rent? Let's say the rent is $1,500 and they make $40,000. It's a big no-no. You cannot afford to pay that property. Why? Because you still have to pay for utilities on top of it. So make sure that you multiply the rent times 40, and that's how much they need to make. As far as the FICO score, ideally we like to see over 600, okay? But in my opinion, income trumps credit, okay? So if their income is super strong, that trumps the credit. So if they have 550, 600, but they have great income, it's okay with us. Another deal breaker is the criminal background, right? If they have, misdemeanors that are, I'm not 100%, but if they have like possession of weapons, if they have narcotics, we've seen all that. It's a big no-no, right? We don't want to have like a drug house in our property. So super important, right? Criminal records, you need to look at them in more detail, but you just need to be aware of that and cautious, right? Who you are renting to. So those are the factors that we take into account. As far as promoting the property for rent, we use Craigslist, we use Zillow. Now you have to pay $5 for Zillow, and we put it on the MLS. On top of that, we give it to Mark Goodman. He's an amazing leasing agent, okay? He's been amazing renting properties in any suburb, any place, okay? So he's been able to get us like top tenants. So those are the things that you need to consider when screening tenants. Now, if you want to self-manage the property, I do not recommend, meaning that you're going to be taking calls from the tenants and handling the maintenance. I discourage you from doing that because you're going to take valuable time away from what you need to focus on. That's not a money-making activity that if you engage in property management. In fact, that's the opposite. It's going to give you headaches, right? Getting phone calls in the middle of the night because of a toilet leak, right? You don't want that. What you want is to have a professional company manage the property for you, okay? Why? Because they're going to maximize your rent. They're going to keep up with the property maintenance. They're going to make sure that the tenants pay on the 5th, else they're going to issue a 5-day notice. And not only that, they're going to be on top of lease renewals, okay? So many things. Not only that, they're going to know the landlord-tenant ordinance better than you do, right? So please don't take on the property management role. Don't put on that hat, because guess what? If you're trying to save the pennies, you might end up losing dollars, okay? So my advice is, I'm gonna share the resource that we use. So when it comes to property management, right here, property management, we use Secure Pay One, okay? The reason why I love this property management is because all the information is right there. The reason why it's my favorite, because they charge a flat fee, $50 per door, per house, and they get to use our contractors. Whereas most of the property management companies, they charge a percentage of the rents. I was uncomfortable with that because why should they tap into my rental income increases on a yearly basis? I just want the flat fee. And guess what I figure out? They don't make the money on the monthly percentage they charge you. They make the money on the maintenance because guess what? They charge an arm and a leg with like changing a light bulb, 60 bucks, changing a doorknob, 75, just ridiculous. So I wanted the best of two worlds. I want to make sure they charge a flat fee, and I want to make sure they use our handyman, our contractors, because doing that, we can control expenses, right? We can be under budget. We don't want to kill our cash flow, right? So that is why I love Secure Pay One. They've been amazing with rent collection, dealing with tenants' requests. And also, one of the things that I really like is that the minute they get the rent collection, they transfer over that to our bank account. Some of the property management companies, guess what? If they collect the rents, let's say in the first 10 days, you won't get the money that month. They are like a month in arrears, so you're gonna get it like the next month. So you've got to come up with all these cash up front to be able to pay for your mortgage when you transition to them. And some property management companies, they won't give you the money on the 10th when they get the money. They're gonna give you the money on the 15th or on the 30th, right? So they sort of like use your money. So I don't like that. I want the minute you get the money from tenants, I want that transfer over right away, okay? So that's just a quick FYI on screening tenants and property management. Are there any other questions on the line? So I have a question. It was in a class on Monday. I'll fill out the form to get the wholesale group and I have not received. Oh, Phil, can you please make sure that we include Luz Gutierrez in the IC? There's another question from Betsy. Hi, do you guys have multi-units in your portfolio? Yes, we do. We have 4. So we have a 4 flat, we have 2 3 flats, and then we have a 2 flat. For cash flow, I'm glad you brought that up. That's the best, right? Because you minimize your risk by having multiple units. Because if you have one vacancy on a 4 flat, it's not such a big deal. But if you have a vacancy on a single family home, it's a big deal, right? The only difference between multi-unit and single family home is that the quality of tenants is better in a single family home. You're going to have a higher turnover in multi-unit, but the cash flow is going to be better. Okay. Also, single family homes appreciate faster or than multi-units. Multi-units is a little bit more difficult to move. I mean, to sell if you want to buy a different one. So great question, Betsy. And then, but you analyze multi-units similar. You're just going to use pretty much 3 ratios. The gross rent multiplier, pretty much you take the property price divided by the annual gross income. That's going to tell you how quickly you can pay off the property. Then you're going to be using the cap rate, which is the net operating income that I show you what that is, divided by the debt service, divided by the property price. So that's going to tell you pretty much your rate of return on the property. And I love to use the debt coverage ratio for multi-units because that tells me how profitable I'm going to be after I've paid all my operating expenses and debt service, meaning the mortgage. So that's going to tell you your cash flow on multi-units. So debt coverage ratio for the lenders is critical. For me, I really like it, especially for multi-units that you're dealing with more cash flow. Okay, so great question. Are there any other questions on the line? Are 4 units and 3 units in South Chicago? So yeah, South Chicago, yeah, absolutely, Sam. South Chicago, you can get there a lot of multi-units in the Chicago, especially in the South. Okay, but again, you've got to be careful on the location, right? Who pays for HOA? You pay for HOA, Mary. So HOA, we own also condos. So HOA pays for pretty much the exterior maintenance, the building insurance, and for the water. Okay, that's what the HOA is for. The owner pays for that, and typically tenants only pay for electric when you own a condo. But if you rent the property for a high amount, then the rent should pay technically for the homeowners association. So HOA stands for homeowner association. Okay. Are there any other questions on the line that I can help you answer? So again, this is the time for you to ask questions, even if they're not related, I'll be able to answer. Or if you need any resources, we're gonna give them to you. This is your time. So I wanna make sure that all your answers, all your questions are answered. So please, if you still don't have access to DealVault, send a text message to the number that Phil put on the chat. Thank you, Betsy. If you need a one-on-one training, please schedule that. Send a message to Chicago. We'll be able to do a one-on-one with you. Or if you need anything else, please send us a message. So I'm going to remain on the line for the next couple of minutes. Phil, if you could please send the text information for them to get a free trial on the chat again, that'll be awesome. So thank you everyone for joining tonight. I'm gonna be here on the line for the next few minutes. If you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer those questions. So thank you everyone, and I look forward to seeing you on our next event on Sunday. Phil posted the information. It's going to be actually Friday. Everyone needs to join this event on Friday. We have not run events on Friday, but we're gonna do a live deal funding. Okay, so we're going to go through how we fund the property, how we analyze the property, and how we got it funded. So that's gonna be on Friday. This is the first time we're gonna bring a private money lender who funded one of our deals. So I can wait to share all that information with you.